Good morning, friends. Today I want to talk about water sampling, who can do water sampling, and when you might need somebody who's licensed. Let's get into it. So, you have a well water on your house, right? The EPA recommends to test your water at least once a year for bare minimum of bacteria and for nitrates, right? Why? So, bacteria, there's two different types that most people will commonly test for. You got total coliform and E. coli. What are those? E. coli is going to be the nasty bacteria that you'll see in your gut, right? So whether it be your gut, your poo, or some other farm animals, or a goose, right? Doesn't matter. E. coli is usually going to come from poo. The next one's total coliform. Total coliform is going to be just a blanket term for bacteria that's in the water, and it's very similar to like if you just lick the wall that's right next to you, right? There's bacteria on it. Will it kill you? Probably not. But should you be licking walls? Nope. The nitrates, that's going to come from your fertilizers, right? So if you're in a rural area, which most people on wells are, the farms, as they fertilize their fields, or if let's just say they have a ranch, well, guess what? Animals poop. So guess what's going in the ground? Nitrogen. So the EPA recommends to test once a year for bacteria and nitrates, and the reason is because that stuff can change, right? Depending on the time of year, depending on how long it's been, depending on other circumstances surrounding your well, you could get a higher or lower result, right? But if you don't test, you have no idea what's actually in your water. So with that recommendation from the EPA, generally, they're only recommending that the homeowner go and get the sample taken to a lab, right? But that doesn't work every time. Sometimes the homeowner can't drop off the water sample or doesn't know how to take the specific sample. For example, VOCs or pesticides like a glyphosate. Those samples require the bottles to have no air in the bottle at all, and there's usually some kind of preservative like an acid, right? Well, the issue is, if you've never taken a sample in that type of bottle or taken a sample where no air is introduced at all, that can be a little bit tricky. It's a little bit of a harder task to do, especially if you've never done it. Alrighty, sorry about that. Had to readjust everything. So, you as a homeowner want to take your samples into a lab. Doesn't always work out that way to where you can actually do that. Sometimes you might be required to have a licensed professional take it, right? We just talked about glyphosates or VOC samples being taken by a professional because they're kind of difficult. But why else would you need a licensed water sampler to take your samples? Well, let's say that you're applying for a mortgage, right? If you want to purchase a home, refinance a home, well, the lender's going to want to make sure that they're lending on a house that's safe to live in, right? It's occupiable. And the reason they want to do that is so they can secure their money. Because if they're going to pay you $400,000 to buy that house, well, they want to make sure that if you don't pay them back that $400,000, that they can recoup the home and resell it to get their money back. So most lenders will require a licensed water sampler take the samples to ensure that the samples were taken correctly and nobody is faking the results. It does happen from time to time, especially with sampling like for lead or for copper. Those samples can be very scary to people because if you fail, now you have to go through a remediation process to avoid health hazards. Some people will cheat and they'll use bottled water, or they'll run the water for a while prior to taking the lead sample or any of the other heavy metal samples, which will influence the result to not show that there's metal in the water. So whenever you have these mortgage loans, you're generally going to have somebody that's licensed come to take the sample, which does cost a little bit more, right? The moment you attach a license to any task, the license now basically dictates that it's going to cost way more. Generally in the range of 2 to 3x whatever it would have cost you to do yourself. As far as sampling goes for Maryland, right? MDE, the Maryland Department of the Environment, offers sampling classes to just about anybody, right? You can be a lab employee, you could be an inspection company, you could be a mitigation company, you could be a well driller, a plumber. It doesn't matter who you are, but you could go in and get this license. It's about a 4 or 5 hour class, and all you do is take a test, and boom, there you go. Now you're licensed to collect water samples for whatever you need to do. The class will kind of go through how do you test the water, where do you collect the samples, and then after that you have about 2 years of that active license before you have to take the class again. The reason they're going to make you take the class again is that the sampling practices do change, right? There are going to be changes depending on whatever the state feels would be the best way to test whatever particular contaminant you're looking for, right? So generally, whenever this is happening, it's mostly going to be for real estate or for a refinance where you're going to hire somebody else to collect that sample. As a generic homeowner, it's much cheaper and much easier just to collect it yourself, take it in. If you call any of your local labs, they usually will have bottles, and you just swing by, pick up a couple bottles, and then fill up the water with those bottles, bring it back. If you're testing for things like bacteria or anything that requires a preservative, it's super important to make sure you talk to the lab, right? If you just take a Deer Park bottle or a Snapple bottle and fill it up with your own water, well, there's probably going to be bacteria in it because it's not a sterile bottle, right? So you won't get a good result. But if you get the bacteria bottle from the lab bottle is going to be sterile, and it's going to be fine to collect the sample with. As far as how often you want to do this, like I said, the EPA recommends to do it once a year. It's a good idea to also have it done once a year just to make sure that nothing's changed on your well, whether it be somebody smacked it with a mower. This time of year, with the first cut of the season, generally that's where we start to see a lot of other issues. Is people are just now starting to cut their lawns and they smack the conduit, right? You smack the conduit, you potentially allow bacteria and other things to infiltrate your water supply, and then that can cause some headaches. I know that we covered a lot of ground, right? I hope that this has been somewhat informative for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them below. I try to get to all of the comments as fast as I can. If there's a specific topic you'd like me to cover, leave a comment below. I try to get to all of them, and it helps me figure out what you want to hear. If you enjoy it, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Until next time, guys.